Very rainy day on campus today, and I got soaking wet. Hopefully that's not too obvious or distracting for this video. Right, so in the next few videos, I'm going to talk about how we apply the scientific method to psychology. But before I get started with that, I want to talk about why we need it. Why do we need the scientific method? Is that really necessary for the sorts of topics that we study in psychology? Because a lot of people, when they hear about what psychologists study, or they hear about psychological research reported on the news or something like that, they'll say, did we really need a study to tell us that? I could have told you that. It's common sense. There is this common notion that psychologists kind of waste time by studying things that could be known just through common sense. But the thing is, a lot of people fail to realize the limitations of so-called common sense or just human thinking in general. We can talk about common errors in thinking that everybody engages in. If you have ever done these things, it does not mean that you are not a bright person. It just means you're a human being, right? So one of these things is hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is where once you find out the results or the answer or the outcome of something, you say, well, I could have told you that. Maybe you are watching an athletic event, a sporting event, and the person wins. It's like, I knew they were going to win. Did you really? It's much easier to say that after the fact, after it happened, right? So hindsight bias is a very common, everybody does it. It's an erroneous belief. It's a mistake, it's not true. An erroneous belief that you knew something all along, that you would have predicted it, you would have guessed the outcome, but you say so after the outcome is already known. And if we are honest with ourselves, in many cases we didn't actually know the outcome. We feel confident now because we know how it turned out. This could even happen in situations like if a relationship ends, you're like, I knew they weren't going to make it. Well, were you really certain about that? Or are you just certain now that you know what will happen? Another common mistake or common error or tendency that we need to keep in check is something called the false consensus effect. Now, consensus has to do with agreement, and false, I think we know what false means. This is when you tend to surround yourself with people who think similarly to you or similar to you in some way, and so you falsely believe that everybody thinks that way, that your circle of people you interact with, that they are representative of everybody. So it's your tendency to overestimate the extent to which others share your beliefs and behaviors. A good opportunity to see the false consensus effects is during election time, any kind of election. You will see that people who vote for a particular candidate or vote in one, direction or for one bill or against a bill or something like that. And I guess if an individual voter, you'd be voting against an amendment or something. You'll often see they'll be surprised, like, does anybody actually support that idiot? How can anybody vote for that person? And the thing is, they've surrounded themselves with people who are similar to them, people who agree with them. So you're hearing from people who think similarly, who probably vote similarly to you. So you'll get this feeling like, well, everybody votes that way. Everybody thinks that way. Even with things like, your personal taste, the things you like, you'll have that moment like, well, everybody hates that movie. And then you'll find someone who loves that movie and you're like, wait, what? Someone likes that movie? And the reason you thought nobody liked that movie is because nobody in your inner circle, likes that movie or votes for that particular candidate. But, sometimes we falsely believe that everybody's similar to the people we interact with regularly. All right. Why am I bringing up hindsight bias and false consensus? These are just a sampling of some of the many errors that we have in our thinking. These are things that fit with our common sense thinking, the things that feel right to us. We know them, but we don't check them. We don't test them. We don't go and try to get evidence that they are correct. We just trust that they're correct because they feel correct. Well, the scientific method is something that allows us to test, to check, because sometimes, even when something feels very right, sometimes it's wrong. And the scientific method gives us the ability to check if something is actually factual, is actually truthful. There have been times where we examined a common belief and found it to be false. One common example is if you have ever heard the expression opposites attract, in terms of romantic relationships. Opposites are drawn to each other. People who are different are drawn to each other. It's a common saying. I've heard it many times. When I was younger, way back, long time ago when I was younger, and this may surprise you if you've been following along, but I was kind of nerdy. All right, I know, we all know. All right, so I was kind of nerdy, and if I would pay any attention at all to somebody who seemed, cooler, more of a bad boy, bad girl type, and people would say, oh, opposites attract, you like the bad boy. And I'd be like, well, no, they're in my class and I want to get the homework from them. They'd be like, no, you like them, opposites attract. Well, a lot of people believe that's true, but we can do research, and scientific research on the truthfulness of that statement shows us it's typically not true. It is much more common for people to be attracted to and end up dating or sometimes marrying people that they have a lot of things in common with. Similarity is a huge predictor of interpersonal attraction. Being the opposites is a huge predictor of not getting together at all or of breaking up. So science allows us to get that evidence to show us, oh, this common idea, this common saying, it's not true. It's false. How do we know? We did some research. So in the next video, I'll give some basic steps of the scientific method, which is how we conduct our research.